Hello, this is Cam from the Brother Slim, and today we are talking about Into the Unknown's Summer Store Update, which is a bunch of cool stuff. So, by and large, I'm just a dude on the internet, so feel no need to listen to this if you don't want to, but we're going to be calling it a little buyer's guide based on what's on offer with some personal thoughts, the game content that is included versus the minis, and then also a little bit of lore speculation at the end here too. So we'll try not to get this too rambly. And let's go ahead and start with, we'll work through basically what's displayed on the update, and then look at the actual sculpts and such in the store here as well. So first things first is the Aether Nymph. From my understanding, and I think this was said in the update as well, this is basically just for the people who supported the Resin Nymph campaigns before. So basically, if you got those and you want the last Nymph in Resin, then get this. But there is going to be a, I think, PVC plastic one coming in the expansions. Expansions or reprints? I think it's in the expansion box. So that'll be showing up for everyone who got cycles 4 and 5 in plastic regardless. Moving past that, does have the fun art card, which is nice. And it is kind of cool how they're doing like the signed collector piece for all these releases too. Alrighty, so goes without saying, or I don't know if it goes without saying or not, the intent and purpose behind all of these store releases is for miniature collectors and painters. So if you're not into that stuff and you're really worried about the game content, I wouldn't buy them just for the game content. And like, if you do have that itch and you feel you need to scratch it, get the Titans over the big expensive minis. I just feel like there's more value there, especially Cycla. Cycla is so cool looking, but I think it's all in USD, and being Canadian, it's even more expensive. And looking at some of the pictures, and we'll get into it, but yeah, I'd say if you need to buy anything, Titans, and if you have all of the disposable income, then go and get ahead and get everything. But we'll go through it all one by one. So firstly, we have Corona, which is pretty cool. Let's look at the sculpt first. Oh, there's also the 2 new shirts, which are pretty neat. I think the simple white one would be my preference there. Although this one is still, I think, my favorite. And it's too cool. Alrighty, Corona, where you at? There we go. So the Corona sculpt is pretty freaking cool. Let's let this load in here. Come on. So you get the mini with the scenic base, which is nice. A chainblade gear, Polemarchos pattern card, and then the certificate and art piece, and a nice fancy box with it. So I'm really curious how this chain is going to be in the actual physical mini, because in my experience, resin isn't necessarily the strongest material, and especially if you're using it as a game piece rather than a kind of like stick it on the shelf collector piece, I feel like it's going to be pretty fragile. So just be aware of that. I think the mini itself is really neat, super dynamic, and also like a fun take on kind of like White Hand of Sauron style helmet, which I'm here for. And then the cool Kratos / Asian inspired chainblade is really neat too. Some more pictures of the skull. I will say that these 3D sculpts look like, oh, I didn't realize there's actually a horse there too. Cool. Well, there might be a statue, hard to say. Are markedly improved upon how a lot of the 3D sculpts and renders looked in the campaign page, whenever that was last year. So there is that, which is nice, because I thought a lot of them felt kind of flat. But let's take a look at the gear. So we can see most of the chain blade here, and I think, yeah, we'll just zoom in a little bit. There we go. So Polemarchos, this is the Kratos card, which is pretty neat. So you get some differences, and I'm not going to go into each and every symbol. One thing I would recommend is check out game words. Maybe I'll put a link in the description of this video, actually, because it's got this amazing reference of all of the keywords and rules in all of the ATO games, and it's fantastic. It's a great resource. So yeah, definitely recommend checking it out. But in short, some of these, that's the wrong one, there we go. Some of these tokens and whatnot aren't all in Cycle 1. So like, although everything's supposed to be dialed in for like when you're able to unlock them, some of these things definitely seem stronger than necessarily just Cycle 1, but this is also coming from someone who's only played as the Maze Runner Titan. We haven't unlocked the Earthshaker or anything else in Cycle 1 yet too. So I know that there are a couple little differences here and there as well. So it seems in order. Some of the things are Cycle 1 and 2 as far as the tokens that you can get. Then the Chainblade, I like how they did this so you can just kind of see where you can craft it. So long mass spear is cycle 1, and you can kind of tell by the art style on the card there as well if it's in with Truth of Labyrinth. And long mass spear, I think we got maybe around somewhere, I almost said lantern year, the year 25 to 35 or so. So like it's a pretty accessible item. And the Chainblade looks pretty cool. So +1 to hits, 2 dice, you get a red per dice, and then an extra red on the attack. The range 2 to 3 is pretty cool. So kind of like, range is so strong, and I think reach weapons are my favorite. And I kind of think this is almost like a hybrid of a bow and a reach weapon in a way, so that range 2 to 3. So you need to be close, but you can't be too close. When you hit, pull the Primordial until it is adjacent to you. Moving outside of your effective range doesn't cause a chain break. Cool. So I was kind of curious about the moving outside of your effective range. My assumption is if you get knocked back, then it doesn't cause a chain break, which is pretty cool. So basically saying that like if you get knocked back, you're still able to continue your attack. And then Overbreak 2. I can't remember the rule for Overbreak 2, so maybe we'll use game rates and look it up really quick here. During the second ability window, if your total power exceeds the AT field by 1 or more, place X break tokens in the credits pool. So pretty cool, and I don't think that otherwise shows up in the Titans that I've used, at least, which again is quite limited. And then, yeah, so honestly, that sounds like a freaking sweet weapon. That sounds really cool. But again, though, is it worth the $30 US plus shipping? Not just for the for the 1 gear card. You got to be like a mini collector to really get the benefit of it. The art's freaking awesome. I am going to go over the little lore blurbs at the end, but we'll save that for the end. Next up, we have Porphyria. We'll look at the sculpt again first, just for fun. Porphyria, where you at? And there we go. I've got my work account for the computer logged in, so I think things are going a little bit slow, plus with the video recording. The sculpt is pretty cool. It's I think it's one that's kind of hard to capture with the render here. Just trying to get like the perfect angle to photograph it. But I like it. It's very whimsical. I looked up the name, and I don't know what it's a reference to, but it is apparently the name of some seaweed or something, so I don't know if that's what the plant life in the bottom is an allusion to. But yeah, it's like a very jovial sculpt, very whimsical and fun with these like gardener pickaxe things. Yeah, it's cool. Me likey, me likey. As far as the content, so there is the Blasphemous pattern and the Gardener's gear card. Blasphemous, same idea. There's some tokens that you wouldn't usually see throughout like the beginning of Cycle 1, so some kind of fun stuff to play around with there. Gardeners, you get to replace the Jawbone Axe, so I think once again, kind of like early-ish to mid Cycle 1 is when you could craft this. So 2 dice plus 0 to hit. What does that say? I don't know what that little thing there says. Reposition 1. Reposition is always useful, being able to get that end of turn movement. Opening 2 is also pretty sweet, and each hit gain 1. I always forget the name of that. It's not danger, it's the to wounds mechanic. Then crit chance, gain an extra 1 too. So pretty cool. Again, feels like a balanced weapon, and it looks sweet. And then next up, Meleager. Let's take a look at Meleager. Have some coffee. Yum. Ready, Roo. Let's go, computer. Let's go. Of course, the mini Scenic Base, Char's Courage gear card. Atropos Strain. I can't remember what Atropos means. But yeah, this one's pretty neat. It kind of gives me Poseidon vibes, and I feel like that kind of fits with the weapon. Although the name, and getting into some lore stuff here, if I remember correctly, Meleager is someone who hunted a boar, which is in the description, to do with the Argonauts or something like that. I can't remember for sure. But yeah, this one's cool. I like this a lot. Kind of gives me Spartan vibes. It's got this harpoon and this really cool helmet. Yeah, this mini is super cool. I'm a big fan of this one. As far as the game content, we have, is it Shark's Courage or Char's Courage? Oh, I think there might be a typo there. Char's Courage versus Shark's Courage. Shark Scourge. That's the name, Shark Scourge. Which makes sense with the item. So same idea, you get to craft this in place of a Whalebone Bident, which I think is like around, it was mid Cycle 1 for us. So this might be my favorite weapon so far. Also, Atchpaw Strain. Let's touch on that quick. I wonder if there's a better picture of it. When you're about to resolve a minor or major trauma, Second Chance. Second Chance, I think, lets you redraw an O-Ball, so pretty sweet. Gives you another 50-50 chance to not die. Unless it's directly related to the card draw that's being drawn itself, I'm not sure. Because I don't think we, in our play, I don't think we had Second Chance since like the very beginning armor. But Shark Scourge. So 1 dice plus 1 hit, a black and a red. Black dice are quite powerful. Reach 2, reach is also powerful. Commit's a negative, you got to spend a fate to use it, so a bit of a balancing piece there. Wound, place a negative speed modifier token on the primordial sheet. When you unexhaust this card, discard that token. And this is also only 1 hand. So I could see 2 ways to play with this weapon. One would be you just use it as your go-to damage dealing weapon and just use it every single turn, hoping to hit every turn, or hoping to hit and wound every turn to keep that -1 movement on, because -1 movement tokens, this is coming from Fen, who is the man, the myth, and the legend when it comes to anything boss battle game related, and definitely covers a lot of Kingdom Death content specifically. Amazing fellow. But yes, so quoting him, negative movement tokens on boss battlers are a big deal, so really, really neat. The other one, being a one-handed weapon, is you use this, wound it, and then just don't unexhaust the weapon. Again, though, like I feel like it is a strong weapon, so it does kind of give you a cool push and pull mechanic of what makes the most sense. There's also abilities that make you unexhaust everything too. So yeah, fun things to consider there. I think that might be my favorite weapon of the bunch, but let's see what else we have. Xeno we'll go to next. Okay, so we get the keelbow gear. This one comes with 2 gears, pretty cool. And so the keelbow and the Hermes winch, and the usual other goodies there. Looking at the artwork. This one's neat. Kneeling minis can be really cool, but I think they are harder to pull off effectively. I just feel like, although it is a very dynamic pose, it feels static compared to a lot of the rest. And I think just with like the extra light armor / harness robes that it's wearing, I think it might be my least favorite sculpt of the bunch. But that's not to say it's a bad one, because it is still cool. But looking at the kit that it comes with, we have 2, the keelbow and Hermes winch. We can't see when you can craft them. They're going to show here. No, it does not. That's okay, though. So these are pretty cool. So the keelbow, 2 dice, plus 3 to hit with an asterisk, and then a single red dice per hit. So range 3 to 4. Cumbersome. Lots of bows have cumbersome. Daze is something I don't know. I wonder if we can look it up here. Daze, during either the first or second ability window, if adjacent, you may turn the primordial without moving it in a way that would result in your Titan being in one of its rear spaces. If adjacent, how would that work though? Because you wouldn't be able to be adjacent to use the weapon. Interesting. I'm curious about that. But we'll keep reading here. So place an opening token on this card. For each opening on this card, gain +3 position. When you attack, discard all opening tokens from this card. So kind of good little storytelling of the miniature itself, because the mini is clearly taking game, so that's cool. I'm curious how good this is. So you obviously get a big increase to hit, which is pretty fantastic. Me and the boys struggle to hit sometimes. So just having that innate +3 is pretty sweet. But only having 2 dice and 2 reds feels like maybe it's something that you want to set up if you know that there's a BP1 card that'll be next or something like that, just so you have more of a chance to actually wound it with like this low strength kind of weapon idea. Losing cumbersome is really cool though, because I think the vast majority of ranged weapons have cumbersome, which means you need to use your movement and your attack action to actually use it. So losing cumbersome is cool. I like that a lot. Is it overpowered? I don't think so, because the bow itself seems more of like a setup weapon rather than a like big damage dealer. And then you also like quite literally need to take a turn setting it up too. So like it doesn't feel overpowered to me. Again, we can't tell when it's craft, but sometime in cycle 1. So I'd say like once again, early to mid. Hermes Winch is pretty cool. So you can spend, 2 fates to scale, which lets you get up on a vantage point, and then you can spend 2 fates and exhaust the card. And if you're on a VP, a vantage point, you may swap spaces with another Titan in it that is adjacent to the Primordial. You may use this ability as a free action or at the end of your turn. So this sounds really cool. We haven't seen that many vantage points come up. I think they've come up in 3 fights, and I think we're on like day 50 or 60 something now in Cycle 1, so we're pretty far through, I hope. And when they have, one time it was a literal game changer, and I think the other 2 times you weren't able to actually make use of them, just luck of the dice. But the one that it was a big deal was awesome. So I could see that, like, it's a free way to get up on a point, which is awesome. But then also being able to take a turn, in a perfect world, win the Primordial, and then spend 2 fate to get someone else up there, and then they can take their turn and gain the benefits of being on that vantage point, which I think is like an additional to hit or wound or something like that. Big deal. Like that's really neat. So I think Marcin does say like this will be a staple, rightfully so. Like that might be, it's situational, but because not every Primordial has those VPs, but it seemed like a really good item for sure. Okay, and this chonky lad, let's pull him up here on the other window. Harbinger. So Harbinger, I'm probably not going to get any, but if I am to get any, this would be the one. And fully based on the miniature itself. The gear card's cool and all, and the trauma card is funny, but just because the mini is amazing. Let's take a look here. To get the Harpoon Ballista, Formidable Gut gear card. Oh, Formidable Gut is a gear card. I think that might be a typo, because I think it's actually a trauma card. But yeah, look at this chonky lad. There's a few chonkers in this game, and they're all just so full of character. I love them. So Harbinger, he's got his sushi on his back, he's got his ballista, he's got his stilts in the mud for roads, which we'll touch on in the lore bit, and just so full of character. I love it. Yeah, so there he is from the sides. Look at those thick legs, the mast stilts, super cool. There's a fin on this fish thing. Yeah, this one is by far my favorite. The helm is just all chonky too. Like, everything about this guy is just so full of character, and I love it. All right, well, let's look at what he comes with. So, Harbinger. So this one, and it says in the update too, it's styled after Cycle 5 because that's when this gear card is. Oh, it's okay, condition trauma. Yeah, I think it is a trauma card. Just looking at the formula got quick. Anyways, distractions. Looking at the Harpoon Ballista gun. So it's got the artback of Cycle 5, just because that's like the power level of it. You may craft this gear instead of something in the Harpoon, something Harpoon from Cycle 5. So yeah, that's when it's meant to be made. Again, it does say that you can obtain them in-game via crafting, looting, achievements, or something else. So I don't know if there's multiple ways to get it. I'm assuming not, because it would have to already be in the game to say so. So maybe that's just a little nod to it's once you purchase it, it's your game and you can use everything in it however you like. So that could be it. Okay, so 2 dice plus 1 to hit, a black and a red plus an additional black, which is pretty cool. And again, comparing it to the Harpoon that has the red and the black as a Cycle 1 weapon, I do think that Harpoon is really strong. The Shark Spear, or Shark Scourge. So unique, so you can only have one, ranged 4 to 8, so it's definitely a ranged weapon. Unwieldy, I'm unfamiliar with that actually, let's check that out. Nothing there. So that may just mean unwieldy, something coming in Cycle 5 is my guess. Or maybe Cycle 4 too. So commits, we know that one, it means you need to spend a fate to be able to activate it, which is obviously expensive, but this is a powerful weapon. Cumbersome, you need to use your movement and attack action to shoot it. It's not. I've already forgotten the term for it, but you don't need to use your movement. Oh yeah, that's cumbersome. Pull 6, so you can pull a Titan very far, which is neat. Then also armor piercing, which is something I don't know. Let's see if it's something that exists. Armor piercing. During the power reroll, ignore hardened, which is something I haven't seen yet. No spoilers, so I'm not going to look it up. And then ignore the microwave shield trait. Microwave, I think, is Cycle 5 specific, and I think it's to do with Meducatos, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. But it might be, oh no, the Undersea Dragon guy. Harpoons, don't know what that means, but I'm sure it's something cool. So yeah, really interesting, unique item, Cycle 5 specific, so it's strong, but it's gated to the last cycle of a freaking ginormous game. Okay, so before we get into the rest here, just one comparison piece. So there is already a Titan that you can, or like you could buy before. And so the comparison there is that one doesn't come with any gear, but it does come with like a full-blown Titan sheet with like the unique abilities and such too. So I did get the tail spinner, and I saw some complaints online about the miniature, and like, I mean, maybe it's not as good as like the Kingdom Death resins, which I haven't seen, or definitely not as good as like their hard plastic. It shouldn't be. It's a small batch resin miniature. I still think it's light years ahead of a lot of board game minis, so no complaints from me, but I am also someone who's spent a lot of time over the years messing around with miniatures and building them and kit patching them and all kinds of stuff. So that could be why some people had issues being a little bit more novice or expecting it to be boutique and really high quality, which for the very first run of anything like this that they'd done, I thought it was a great job. As far as the comparison, so has the full Titan sheet instead of any gear or trauma or any cards like that. Oh, and I missed the, I guess we'll backtrack just really quick. So the Formidable Gut, if you are using any of the Chonker Titans, so the Fire, Starter, Harbinger, or Tree Jumper, for the duration of the battle, add this card to the trauma deck. You may ignore the next knockback or pushback you would suffer when you do discard this card. So just like a nice gentle trauma, which is nice because some of them are so vile. But yeah, so in comparison to the Tail Spinner, it's the same price, and it has a Titan sheet instead of any gear and such. For me, buying them in Canadian dollaroos isn't really the best value. Are they priced horribly? No, not at all. They are, once again, these limited run minis. And I think the quality is good. But I think the big takeaway for these is that some of them we might see at a later date in Aeon Trespass number 3, which is hopefully a long time in the future with how much game's on the way, but we might see some of them there. The Tail Spinner, I don't think we will, and I think that's why it came with a Titan sheet. The other ones, however, I think they might be tied into feature content or cut content. If it's cut content, we probably won't see them, but if it's feature content, we might, which would be cool. Again, though, like all of these, I think the Tail Spinner is the most like complete one to use in the game. And I'm curious about the other ones as far as the, sorry, just getting a little rambly, about how to unlock them and where they come into play. So we are hopefully near the end of Cycle 1, and we have not had the opportunity to play with the Tail Spinner yet. If I recall correctly, it unlocks once you've completed 3 adventure hubs. I think we've completed 1.5 maybe, so like 1.5 hubs after probably 40-ish hours of gameplay approximately. So it's gated, and it's gated pretty well. Again, if we wanted to, we could just play with it now because it's our game as we could, but haven't felt the need to yet. Yeah, so those are cool. And if I was to buy any gameplay ones and I had the budget set aside for that kind of disposable income, I would get 1 or 2 of the Titans for sure. That being said, this is all like the fun, newest, coolest stuff, which is all brand new to us, and it's easy to get the FOMO feeling. And I just caution that there is so much game in the game boxes themselves, including so many crazy secret gear cards and all kinds of really cool stuff. And it's really easy to forget about what's in the box we already have. So I would just caution that none of these are necessary. And yeah, it could be fun, it could be cool, and is the newest thing online. But there's so many cool things already. So I'll leave off there, but that's just my word there. Actually, I guess one thing to add there as well is we can save it after exploring the next 2. So next up we have Times Woe. So Times Woe was one of 3 primordial nemesis kind of characters who was put to a vote in the campaign last year. And Times Woe came 2nd place, so it's cool to see it come back in some form rather than it just being gone forever. So we get the miniature, a 60mm base, Doomsday Clock gear, Damocles Weight gear, and Ahead of Time gear, plus Times Woe momentum traits, and then the usual special box and certificate and art and stuff. So it's cool to see, because I think it did have a sculpt before, but it only showed this picture. And this one kind of reminds me of a sculpt kind of similar to that really prancy Titan, where it's hard to get like a perfect angle of like what it actually looks like on a table. And so it's great to see some more pictures of it. You can see this sundial thing, or time dial, I suppose, on its back. You can also get a look at its creepy face in profile, which looks cool. I wasn't too keen on it, but seeing this in like an actual 3D form, I like it. It's cool. It's very cool. Let's look at what it comes with, though. So I was confused on this at first. So times woe momentum, seeing as it's a trait, I initially thought that it would be a trait for whatever Titan battle or primordial battle that you replace it with. And it's supposed to replace or be a stand-in for the Oracle, Harpy, or Dahaka. And keyword there, it doesn't change any of the AI and DP decks. It's just like the miniature changes. And so I thought that the times woe momentum trait would be added to those fights to change those fights. I was incorrect. Looking over the small text here, it actually is something that changes how your Titan functions, which is still really cool, but just I feel like a little bit lower scope than I thought. And it makes sense. Like there's so many crazy BP and AI cards that a trait that totally changes it would be pretty wild and probably very unbalanced. So all this stuff is going to be just given who its replacements are. My assumption is all this gear is going to be fitted around cycle 3 and 4. So we had Ahead of Time, which is a gear, Ascended, unique. You may equip Paradox regardless of the cycle you're in, or Paradox. No idea what Paradox is. I kind of hope it's an axe just for the pun. You get 2 reroll dice. It's got Superior Chance. Let's see what chance is. I don't know what Superior Chance is. That's okay though. Alrighty, Doomsday Clock. Do we have any? So Doomsday Clock, here we go. So this is a shield, and looks like it's the thing from its back, which is pretty neat. I love how it's like a sundial, but time, which, I mean, is super fitting. So 4 dice, +4 to hits, a single red, and you get +1 Scriggly Scratch, we'll call it, can't remember the name. The Titan uses the times woe momentum trait, so that's that trait, which we'll read in a sec, which your Titan gets to use, which is cool. You can spend 2 fate to rewind. You may use this ability as a reaction, or spend a fate to reestablish your time anchor. You may use this ability as a free action or at the end of your turn. So time anchors are part of cycle 3, and I have no idea what they do. You do also get a armor roll, at least, with a black die, which is pretty cool, and something else there too, which I can't read. It's going to show up here. Black and red, and yeah, no idea what that symbol means. Then the badge. So badges are pretty cool. I've got one from the Tailspinner as well. So basically they are just a free item that as soon as you get the card, you can use it, which is neat. So I think it was Damocles. Damocles Weight. So it's unique. Once per battle, you can use an ability. Yeah, we can't really read that. Is it up here at all too? Once per battle? No, so we can't quite see what Damocles Weight does. Discard this card and suffer death 1. So a crit evade fail, which I don't actually know how a crit evade fail works. But anyways, if that happens, discard this card and suffer death 1. But the times woe momentum, also death 1 sounds bad. Like, does that imply that there's death 2 and 3? I assume yes. What does it mean? Times woe momentum. Start of the battle, assign a time anchor token to your Titan. Place it under your Titan. Start of your turn, move the time anchor 5 spaces in a random direction. If you draw a card with the sorority symbol, place the time anchor something, your Titan, instead of choosing a direction. Rewind, place your Titan on the time anchor if your time anchor is next to... Yeah, so basically it gets to play around with a time anchor and whatever the time anchor does. So I'm not sure, but I'm sure it's an interesting effect. Okay, then next up, actually last but not least, we have... I'd say the coolest mini of the bunch, and I love how it's tied with the Harbinger too, because they're my 2 favorites. This thing is kind of gives me Kingdom Death vibes a little bit with the hands, except it's still very much ATO in its own thing. It's so creepy and cool, the Beach Sick Lab. Let's check it out on the store first so we can see those pictures. I have some more coffee as well. There's also only 3 left, which is cool to see. Hopefully it's people... purchasing responsibly, because this one is very expensive at $160 USD. I think it's USD at least. Okay, so you get the special, very long, oblong base, Ember of Guilt gear, Balian Cloak, Nemesis Harpoon, and then the usual goodies. So yeah, this thing is so cool and creepy. In a way, it kind of gives me like King Laid Low vibes from Kingdoms Forlorn. Once again, it's its own, clearly very distinct horrible whale monstrosity, but similar posture and the crawlingness for sure. There's its backside. It's got a boat coming out of it. Yeah, it is creepy and neat. I like it. I like it a lot. I cannot justify the 160 bucks. Definitely not something in the budget. And I kind of think this might be a creature that we see in game number 3. Maybe. But let's look at its gear cards for now, and then we'll get into speculation and stuff after. Alrighty, Roo. So let's look at the Nemesis Harpoon up here first, because we can see it better. So once again, this has the blue text, so it's styled in Cycle 5. So it's going to be very strong gear that you don't get until late, unless you decide just to use it because, again, it's your game. Nemesis Harpoon, 3 dice plus 0 with an asterisk. 2 red dice. So unique, so you can only have 1. Range 2 to 4. Pull 4. Hope 1, opening 3. Hope 1, no idea what that means. Let's see if it's something that is in the base game. Yes, it is. So place a Hope token in the creator's pool. During the power roll step, every Hope token in the creator's pool allows the attacking Titan to turn 1 potential or 1 dot into... Oh, that's kind of a spoiler for myself. I didn't know what the dots do. That's okay, though. Into a scratch. Neat. Very neat. At the start of the bottle, gain... At the start of the battle, not the bottle, gain a Aether token. And Fate to do Harpoon, whatever that means. Crit miss, which is dangerous when you have 3 dice. Move the adversary, which is kind of terrifying. Kind of fitting with its name, though, Nemesis Harpoon. Although adversaries are their own distinct thing from Nemesis. Just Nemesis Harpoon, and you've got a chance of moving your adversary Nemesis. Excuse me, that's pretty cool. Okay, so, and then if you got 3, I think that's Aether, gain 3 precision. So if you have enough of these Aether tokens, this weapon becomes a beast, basically. Again, it's only got 2 reds, but still, that 3 precision is pretty sweet. Crit miss, though, is super dangerous. So that's the one. Ember of Guilt. So this is another badge. Once per battle, when you're about to gain the Dread or Holy Terror condition card, you may gain, respectively, Fear or Terror instead. When you do, place a condition token on this card as a reminder. Crit evade fail. Again, I don't actually know how to crit evade fail. Discard this card and draw an O-Ball, which is pretty terrifying. Holy Terror I'm not familiar with. I assume it's from a later cycle, or it's not even released yet, who knows? But Dread, we experience quite often. So it's a double-sided condition card, and you start with Fear, and then if you get the Fear again, you turn it over to Dread, and Dread is extra bad. So it's a way to mitigate extra bad things happening, which is fun. And again, that's just a freebie that you can use as soon as you get this, which is cool. Balian Cloak, so it improves your chance of dodging attacks, which is neat by 1. Unique Bypass. What does Bypass do again? You can move through other Titans, which is also very strong. Just increased movement in these games is always a big deal. And you can spend a Fate for when you're about to gain Ambrosia tokens. Lower this gain to 1. That's also sweet. We definitely died from Ambrosia against the Hermesian Pursuer, and so being able to... I don't know if we ever gained more than 1 in 1 attack from him, though, but I'm assuming that's something that happens later. Also, 9 plus danger, you can spend a Fate to dodge. Cool. Yeah, so Balian Cloak, super neat, and also just the art is fantastic because it plays directly into the miniature, which I love. I love that stuff. It's so cool. Okay, so yeah, that's a summary of the minis and gear that is available in this limited release summer update. Again, just to summarize, if you absolutely need to cave in and get something and you're really keen on the gameplay, get a Titan or 2. It's just got the most value. If you're a collector, miniature hobbyist, painter, and builder, and all that kind of good stuff, and you've got the budget for it, go play, have fun. I do think that the Beach Ciclet is expensive for its size. The mini looks really cool. I'm a big fan of it, but just looking at... Let's see, I think there's more pictures. Yeah, here we go. So just looking at the size of the boxes and the comparison of the Titans, it doesn't look like a big mini, and 150 bucks, I would expect it to be like a big showpiece, for me personally at least. Yeah, so you can kind of see the size comparison there. This is obviously more zoomed in though, so keep that in mind. It's a big mini, but it's not huge, and I think part of it is just because it is crawling, so it kind of the scope of it seems smaller compared to the size of the base. But yeah, I would say hold off on getting that. There might be a chance it's available in a future campaign as like an actual primordial or adversary. I wouldn't be surprised if it's an adversary actually, given some of the stuff that we'll talk about in a sec here. But yeah, so I think that one probably has the highest chance of us seeing sometime in the future in an official game. The other things, maybe some of the Titans, but Times Well maybe as well. It does seem to be a bit of a crowd favorite. But yeah, so that is what I would say for now. Is again, all of the sale is geared towards like mini hobbyists, and there is the gear, which is a cool incentive, and it's really sweet that it's there. But it does feed into FOMO, which is tough because I get it from both sides. This is the first game where like I want every piece of it, and that's just an impossibility. So one comment that I like from Arson, because there's a fair amount of people asking for it, is if they would consider doing like a card pack in the future of all these gear cards. And to paraphrase, he said, yep, it's something that we definitely consider once we have enough releases out to justify it, which is a super fair answer, considering they'd already said that I think they're planning on doing another update possibly in autumn. So we might see like a card pack maybe for Christmas or sometime next year, and I think that would be super fair. But again, there's so much cool gear in the base game, and there's a whole bunch more coming in September with the expansions, that all of these are just like little treats, and there's a veritable Halloween feast already at home and coming to us soon. Okay, moving on to some lore stuff. So let's start with, I pulled up this, because I did actually touch on this in the video that I just posted, should be yesterday. But some of the little lore blurbs from the Titans really kind of allude to a creature that we haven't seen in game yet, I don't think, but a creature that we have seen as an add-on. So essentially, Ganymede was chucked into space by Zeus, and this is the little blurb that we get, and then there is the creepy, creepy art there. It gives me Quintesson vibes from old school Transformers, and I'm freaking here for it. All right, so the vicious eldritch horror, or eldritch creature, seems to share a maker with a dread burden. Though the scratch marks, the frost damage, and the empty gaze of the blinded suggest it spent considerable time in a place devoid of light and warmth, like a void. While most monstrous creatures of post-Eschaton House have black ambrosia coursing through their veins, Ganymede of Acro years bleeds aether skyward. It moves lightning fast, defying gravity. It shares cosmic nightmares and is near indestructible. It is also possibly not a primordial at all, but rather something different. Something new, a harbinger of some horrible future yet to be visited in Porhalas. Though the signs are there in the night sky, in the crater depths, whispers of terror of tomorrow, of Acro years. The Ganymede of Acro years eats light and does not move when looked upon. It does not have an AT field, which means it cannot be wounded. Step into the unknown future of Aeon Trespass. Look to the stars and tremble. Okay, so this is also all total lore speculation, because again, me and the boys are only in Cycle 1, so there's so much that we don't know about the game, but it's fun to speculate and see what's ahead. So that's what we know about this Ganymede of Acro years creature from outer space, and let's just take a little read through of the Titan lore blurbs. Okay, so the first one, we don't need to read about the Aether Nymph. So Corona, the thing descended from the night sky like a drop of resin, at once swift and sluggish. It shone a bright, cold, pale light like that of the sickly moon. For all they knew, it came thence. Where it landed, a silver-white bloom spread, and an unseen veil settled across the sleeping polis. Corona charged at it, even before the first cry of madness. So this one, a little loose, but again, something descending from above in the night sky. It shone a bright, cold, pale light. We got that cold, pale vibe from Ganymede. And then the thing definitely looks like it's could have a cry of madness for sure, looking at the art in that face. So that's one little tease blurb. And also, so one thing with these Titans, so Corona is a Rhodian Titan. We'll just remember that as well. And then next up, for the blurb for Porphyria. It moved in unpredictable looping arcs, its dance as deadly as it was mesmerizing, its scythe arms cutting through the stone of the soaring towers as readily as it rent bronze and flesh and bone. A chilling, gruesome display that froze the hearts of both mortals and Titans. Porphyria did not freeze, and, living up to her namesake, she did not flinch either. She clashed with the thing that twice overtowered above her, and made it stop its onslaught, if only for a moment. I think there was a sculpt of this thing. I don't know if it had bladed limbs or scythe limbs or not. I remember it does have little stick limbs, kind of similar to the Burden, which is kind of the comparison that I draw. But in the sculpt, I think it had cute little feet things too. But there's that. Then next up, Meleager. Seizing the opportunity, Meleager was the third to strike. The Argobron spear piercing the thing's AT field, searching for its heart. But there was no heart, and there was no AT field. So again, Ganymede of Echo Years doesn't have an AT field. Yet Meleager, a true descendant of his father, the Boar Slayer, did not recoil in fear, but followed through with his ill-fated thrust, salvaging what he could. If not the wound, then his life, and if that proved too much, at least the lives of his companions. So I feel like every single one of these is just giving a little hint of things to come. Oh, and one thing tied to not the sickly moon that I just wanted to draw attention to is I would love if the sickly moon has something to do with the moon crawler, a stretch goal that we weren't able to reach in the first camp or in the most recent campaign last year. I love that moon crawler mini. Okay, so we've got that. We've read Meleager. And then Zeno. The philosopher Zeno rejected the existence of space and time in motion. He postulated that all of reality was a closed looping system, a single entity, a single cycle. All of it has happened before, and all of it would happen again. Though his mind was inscrutable, the Titan Zeno rejected that notion. All of it has happened before, and all of it would happen again. Unless you did something, unless you stepped in, unless you broke the cycle. Eternity giving way to infinity, a dream worth dying for. Or, better yet, a dream worth waking with. So this one's interesting. I don't think it necessarily super ties into my little theory about Ganymede of Echo Years and things coming from space. It obviously does tie into a little bit of that with space and time. Space portion there at least. However, one little thing that I think is interesting is about the cycle being broken. So a single entity, a single cycle. Single entity just makes me think of the 0 point entity, which I have no idea about anything about it, but it is just kind of what comes to mind. Single cycle, I feel like kind of tied into the cycles of the game, perhaps. But then specifically, the breaking the cycle, giving way to infinity, a dream worth dying for, or a dream worth waking with. Makes me think of the Argonauts and how at the beginning of the game, you all wake up with amnesia on that crazy boat. So I'm curious if there's some sort of tie into that. And then lastly, for the Titans at least, Rhodes claims it created the desiccated sea in its never-ending search for natural resources, which feels oddly self-conscious for an expansionist empire. Few realize the hegemons have little choice in the matter. Either they accept responsibility, projecting an image of devastating power, or they have to admit that they are at the mercy of a capricious, uncaring world. The Harbinger has survived in the sickless stomach for 3 days and has been baptized in its digestive acids. The hunted has now become the hunter, a taste of things to come. So this is the first one that's not specifically stated as a Rhodian Titan, but it does give us information about Rhodes and the area around it, which is an area that, as far as I'm aware, we never go to in the original Aeon Trespass 5-cycle story. As far as I'm aware, feel free to jump in if I'm wrong there, but no spoilers, please. So it gives me the idea that we're either looking at a section of the game which was cut, or an area that we're going to revisit in the future. I don't know if it's dated at all, but I did a little BGG post about my kind of speculation about where the story is going to take us. So I'll share that down below in the comments if you want to give it a read. But yeah, it makes me think that the TLDR is that, so cycle 1, we go down and basically do the Journey of the Argonauts and face off against Urfleece, which is literally like the Golden Fleece, which is the tail of the Argonauts in itself, down in the very bottom of the seas. And then in 12 Sins of Heracles, we go through all the seasons and we summit Mount Olympus and take out our creepy, deific papa, basically in a divine pocket dimension kind of thing. And all of that's on the campaign page. Maybe I should have said spoilers just in case, but it's all on the campaign page. So if we've been to the bottom of the seas and the highest peaks, it makes sense to me that the third game, sometime in the future, is going to be space. And so I feel like this kind of ties into that with like the Ganymede of Echo Years and like the tales of these other Rhodian Titans facing off against some horrible thing from above, whether that is Ganymede or not, and the sickly moon. And then all this little bit of information about Rhodes. So Harbinger, obviously things to come. And the hunted has now become the hunter, a taste of things to come. So this is total speculation, but it makes me think that roads and this desiccated sea, which sounds really cool, like mudflats and stuff as a area to traverse. Sounds sweet. Makes me think that it might be like the starting zone before possibly going to space in the third game or something. That, or it's cut content, one of the two. That's my thoughts. And then for sometimes, whoa, we don't really need to worry about anything there. I don't think it's anything new. Beach Cicla, the desiccated sea, a barren expanse of toxic mudflats, envelops roads like a widow's pall. Not much survives in this harsh environment, but some things persist, and some things thrive. Many believe the crawling chaos is punishment for Rhodes' hubris and expansionist greed. If only the universe was this caring. The beach cyclists cross the wastes at surprising speed, always looking for sustenance. Stilt caravans of merchants, land ships, mudfisher villages, and even lonely titans. Yeah, that sounds like a sweet location to me. So cool. And just how this thing crawls around looking for sustenance, it gives me adversary vibes. Or maybe Nemesis, if that's like a baked-in mechanic in future game 2, which I'm assuming it will. That's, especially with like the Nemesis spear and such, makes me think that an adversary Nemesis kind of role is what this guy's going to play. And Marcin did say in the update that they want to, or ITU wants to use some different base sizes to mix things up in the future. So it makes sense that this is a early release, once again, collective miniature, and very much like some of the stuff that they've got on their online store that hasn't had game content for like 6 years or something like that, which is now coming out in Sins of Heracles. That this might be the case for this one too, and this could be a really cool, creepy first adversary kind of primordial to face off against. But yeah, that is my kind of lore speculation. Hopefully not too spoilery. I don't think it is, because it's all stuff that's like in updates and on the main campaign page. But yeah, feel free to chime in. We'd love to know what people think of the store updates and my little lore speculation and stuff too from a newbie still in Cycle 1. But yeah, much love. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye!